Howard. Stacy Selder. Here. Carrie Trask. And Kathy Willis.
Okay, thank you. Then I would entertain a motion and a second for the minutes of our September 14th board meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second? A second. Any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Yeah, I have three
Okay,
things that I would have to
Sure.
add it. There's three motions that are in the minutes that were made that do not have the votes on how they went. They'll just say that there was 5-2, 4-2, and 3-4. But there is no verbiage as to who voted which way. Could I get those added, please?
anybody object to that? It's not a requirement, you know.
I understand.
Yeah, you just want them for that.
For the
meeting?
records, yep.
Okay. Any
No objection.
objections to that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to committee reports. Curriculum committee, let's see, Meredith isn't here yet, so we'll move that till later, till Meredith arrives. How's that? Then I'll move on to the report of the superintendent. We have a personnel report from Joyce.
Yeah, thank you. You should have a personnel report in board book that was in your packet on Friday. And there would be an addendum that should be at your places today. So any questions on either one of the personnel reports?
I would entertain a motion and a second to approve those reports.
Can I request that they be split?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do that. It just, you've been voting against the addendums. Just be aware that when you do that, those personnel technically aren't employed, or, for example, you have a resignation, that person couldn't resign.
I understand.
Based on that.
I know, and I've explained why I'm doing that every single time. And appreciate the explanation as to the need for them being done. I just don't like having things just set on my desk for review.
Do we have a quorum right now?
Yeah, we got four.
Okay.
Four is a quorum.
I was thinking we needed 5.
No, we need four.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the first personnel report.
I'm gonna do them separately, yeah, so I am gonna do
sorry.
them separately, so go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I make a motion.
We have a second to that?
Oh,
Second, okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, and then the addendum, we need a motion to accept that?
I'll make the
Motion,
I'll
second,
second.
second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
Okay. Then we will move on to the designating the youth options coordinator. And I'll turn that over to the superintendent actually.
It's an annual designation. We designate high school principal, in this case, Mr. Lee Tennis, as our youth options coordinator. We do need action on that. It's a state requirement to oversee the youth options at Lincoln High School.
Any other questions on that? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to appoint Lee Tennis, the Lincoln High School principal, as the youth options coordinator. Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then we have a 2021 summer school presentation.
Yes. So I'll turn that over to our summer school team. Stacy O'Fallon's here to lead us through that presentation.
Let me get this presentation pulled up for you quickly. Perfect. So thanks for having me here. I'm Stacy O'Pally. I am the Madison school principal and the district summer school coordinator. This is my second year. running the summer school program for MPSD. I'm happy to be a part of it. When we talk summer school, most people think June, July, and August. I think October, because October is really when we start planning for the next summer school year. So we've already started, we've reviewed our 2021 data and programming, and we're already starting to think about summer 2022. So way back in October of 2020, our focus for summer school was to provide safe opportunities for kids. If you remember, at that time, we were just switching to a virtual model. My first year as coordinator, one of the challenges we had is that we had planned great summer school programming and this pandemic hit, and we had to cancel and change things at the last minute. So really our goal was, what can we do safely? What can we provide families and kids that we won't have to change to parents at the last minute? Because we didn't want to do that again to families, and we wanted to provide opportunities. So our programming this summer, last summer I should say, at 2021, consisted of some K-12 virtual enrichment options that lasted approximately 4 weeks. At the beginning of the summer, one of our new opportunities we brought this summer was a Jumpstart to 4K option, which is our incoming 4Kers. So some of these guys are still 3 yet, coming over to the Riverview building to learn about 4K. So we did that as a new program this year in person. We offered elementary academies at, I would say, all 7 of our elementary sites. So that's our 6 elementary schools and the Stangel building. Offered some opportunities for students over there as well. A new program we offered as well this summer was our middle school bridge program. So that program really was focused on some academics, some team building, and to get kids excited about middle school programming. One thing we had heard from parents the year previous is, there's a lot of opportunities for elementary kids, but what about my middle school kid? I'd like my middle school kid to have more math opportunities, more science opportunities, more STEM opportunities. So that middle school bridge program was new this year to address those needs. We also offered a middle school welcome week, which is, again, when you think of that new student or 6th grade orientation, and a high school transition week for our incoming 9th graders and our new students up at Lincoln. And then we did offer in-person athletic opportunities throughout the summer as well. Now, that's a lot of different things in a lot of different places. Before I get any further, I just have to give a shout out to these wonderful women sitting behind me. Sarah Dish and Lindsay Balzan are really the people behind the scenes that are helping to make all this magic happen. So they're helping with parents, they're helping with registration, they're helping with course setup, they're helping with communication. So they really, from October to August, again, it's like a whole year for us, work through all those parts, and they're such an integral part of the program. If we look at the numbers that we had for summer school this year, this chart will show you individual enrollment. So let me just walk through this. If I am an elementary student, I can be included in that elementary academy number of 627. I could also have taken an athletic opportunity and be included in that number of 584. And I could have taken a virtual enrichment and be included in that number of 281. So you can see the breakdown of the numbers of kids. If we looked at how many individual kids participated in MPSD summer school, it's 1,620. Many of those participated in multiple opportunities, but we had about 1,600 kids participate in summer opportunities. One of the great things we did this year as well, working with Lincoln High School and Lainey Longmire up there, really helped to spearhead this, was helping some high school students complete some credits that were needed. So Apex is our online credit recovery option, and then an interim was more of an in-person teacher-led course. So we had 69 students up at Lincoln or McKinley complete an Apex 4-credit course. And we had 36 students complete an interim 4-credit course. So working with Lincoln High School on that. At the end of the summer, we asked for some family feedback about our different programming. So again, Academy and Middle School Bridge is more of that academic, problem-solving, team building type of programming. It was in person. 96% of our families said the balance between learning and fun was perfect. 94% of the parents said that they helped prepare their kid for the upcoming year. And we heard things like, my kid was nervous to come to the school, but after this, they're not nervous to come anymore. We had a parent that said, we had a camping trip planned, but my kids actually begged us to not go camping a day early so we could go to summer school. So those are the kind of things I'm always excited to hear. Some of the feedback that we got from that also was that Middle school and elementary started at the same time. So for families that had kids in multiple buildings, sometimes that was hard. So we take that feedback and we'll look at programming for next year to see how we can improve that. Our athletics feedback from families thought the content was high and the instruction was good. A lot of our sports coaches were doing that instruction. So it's nice to have those varsity coaches sharing their expertise with even some of our second and third graders. And really interesting was that 68% of families said if there was an academic and an athletic component, I want my kid involved in both. So one of the things we do in summer schools, we try to avoid conflicts. We want kids to be involved in as many different things as they can be. And we don't want them to have to choose between, do I go to baseball or do I go to academy? We want to give them both options so they can do both if we want. So that's always our goal, is to eliminate those conflicts so kids can participate in as many different things as they want. Our enrichment was online. So we had 68% of our families take 1 or 2 classes. There was a 40%, we said, if you was offered again virtually, would you want to do enrichment virtually? About 44% of our families said yes. The other percent said they would prefer in person. Again, feedback we take for the future. One thing that has been really exciting with the virtual enrichment is some feedback we've gotten from families is we could do this as a family together. It was recorded, or I could go back, or one of our most popular enrichment classes is Mr. Slager's cooking class. So Mr. Slager's been teaching cooking forever, right? He always did it in person. He offered it virtually this summer, and we had some feedback from parents that said, it was really cool. We actually made dinner as a family together by following Mr. Slager's course. We could pause it, we could rewind it. So we had some good feedback from families about that as well, but always take their feedback about what they prefer for programming. Staff feedback that we collected at the end of summer school. Some categories that ran high were that summer schools run effectively, it felt safe for staff and students, there was support, facilities, and the content was great. I would say, thinking about our elementary and our bridge, and even those transition weeks at Lincoln and the middle schools, the things that I heard over and over again from staff were, it was a great opportunity to build relationships with kids, great opportunity to get kids in the building, and I could do things more creatively and different than I typically don't get to do in the school year. So we really encouraged our staff to think outside the box. Like, this isn't sit and get for 4 hours a day, but how can we do different activities with our kids to keep them highly engaged? So that was some staff feedback as well. We also, I think there was some ease of getting to know kids before they came into a building, kids getting to know teachers. There was feedback that, like, do you know somebody, if you're a 6th grader, do you know somebody now at Wilson Middle School or Washington Middle School that you can go to? And the answer was yes. Some of the feedback is always that we want more of our teachers to teach summer school. Like, we want the teachers, right? So we always encourage our staff to be a part of that planning process and really develop what works best for them. We also added some teacher leader support this year. So those were some teachers that helped support at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary schools. So when principals weren't around or there was additional support needed for staff, they were there, and that was a really well-received structure as well. Flexibility was nice, and family involvement was great, that they really got to know the kids. So people were excited. I will say for our middle school bridge program, that again was new this year, our highest number of enrollees were in 6th grade, our second highest was 7th grade, and our lowest enrollment was 8th grade. So we're excited for the future that these 6th and 7th graders joined, had a great experience, and we'll continue to see those numbers grow from staff. What are we thinking about for the future? Because again, it's almost October at the end of this week. It's time to start thinking about next summer. We want to offer more in-person opportunities next summer than we were able to offer this summer. But we also know that some parents like the flexibility, and even some students up at Lincoln High School, when we talked about credit recovery, liked the flexibility of virtual options. So how do we balance those in-person opportunities with the flexibility that's needed? We want to continue a model that provides multiple opportunities, again, avoiding those conflicts. How can we get kids more involved in different things and exposed to different types of programming, and continue to communicate with families? One thing that we did new this year is we did online registration through IC. The first time you do something, it's always a little bit bumpy, right? But we're going to continue to work on what's the communication. How can we support families that are struggling with that? We were doing like, call the number, we'll get you registered, no problem. So we'll continue to support that process as well. But it was a nice option once we got the online registration, that parents were able to access that anytime and not having to wait for a letter in the mail. So again, our team constantly reviews what we need to do for the future to improve. So next month, I already have my team scheduled, and we're going to continue to talk about Summer School 2022. Just a few pictures from our virtual kids this summer. Some cool kind of creative classes. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Any questions for, Alan?
My kids did attend the summer school this year. They very much enjoyed it. I think it was very well put together. I think you guys did a great job. How many parents did participate in that survey that you did put out to get the feedback?
I could pull it up and let you know. I can email me if you want.
I also had one other question. There was a parent that did have a request to see some things for summer school. Is there a route that they can go to see programs that they would like to be offered in summer school?
Yeah, I have had some parents reach out to me directly, so via phone or email, talking about some specific program they know they're looking for or asking what opportunities we have. So if they are contacting you, I would just direct them my way, and then I bring all that feedback back to the team and talk about what we can offer.
Great, thank you.
If a student has an IEP, will that just roll into summer school, or how are those? And do you have the staff that you need to be able to do that?
So Joanne will probably speak more eloquently than this on this topic than I can, but what I can tell you is that students with IEPs we support during summer school, but it's not part of their regular school year. It's not part of their extended school year. So if an IEP says they need 15 minutes a day of social skills, we don't have to provide that at summer school. Teresa Stockinger, who works over at Franklin, was one of our teacher leaders, and her role was just in special education to help look at IEPs for kids, what kids might need some additional paraprofessional support, what kids might need some sensory support. So we don't have to follow the IEPs exactly as they're written, but we do offer a wide variety of programming and then help to provide support for those kids to participate to the full extent possible.
And then just one other question, with the school being closed and going virtual and back and forth, do we do anything like looking at some gaps or deficiencies that the kids may have had over the school year where they're behind, and then encourage them to come to summer school to focus just on those specific areas?
Yeah, we definitely target, like I'm thinking, especially from an elementary perspective, right? Our middle school program is new.
Okay.
And I'm guessing our middle school program, bridge program, will continue to do this in the future, but we look at our kids who we know have some gaps or some lagging skills, and we do encourage those families to sign up. We talk about, we try to avoid barriers of there's no cost for summer school. We run shuttle buses, so if you need to get on a bus stop, we can get you to school, but we do try to target those kids that we know need those academic supports, and provide that, that right balance of academics and fun during summer school, but at least an opportunity to keep practicing those skills that they need.
Do you feel like a lot of them take you up on that group, or not really?
I think this year's summer school attendance was lower
Okay.
than if we would have compared pre-pandemic.
Okay.
And I think various reasons. I had parents tell me, like, this is the first time we can go on a camping trip. Like, we're going on the camping trip, like we're not sticking around town, or we're going to visit whoever. So I can't tell you a number for certain, but I know that our teachers were really advertise that. We're really strategic too. Like, elementary conferences are typically in February. So we have all the summer school information ready to go. So when those parents come into our conferences, we can say, like, hey, here's how your kid's doing. And here's a great opportunity this summer to continue their learning. So I don't have specific data, but we really do try to target those families.
And is enrichment just to keep them, is it to help them get further along, or is it more to keep their learning up of what they may have learned during that year throughout the summer?
When you think of enrichment, I would think of it like back in the day when I got to go do basketball at summer school, or I got to do a cooking class, or I got to do an arts and crafts class.
Right.
So it's more of that kind of fun, exposing, and what we really are trying to promote with enrichment is how can we expose kids to different opportunities that maybe they didn't have before. So if it's the cooking, or it's the arts and crafts, or if it's bead making, or so it's not academic focused. That would be the bridge and the academy programs, and then the Lincoln High School credit opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Meredith?
I just want to say thank you for making registration online. I remember the days of lining up outside the room, right, and having to take vacation time to get my kids signed up so that they got in the class. That was a game changer.
These ladies remember those days of sitting at the table with the line of parents as well. So
that's a game changer for a lot of people.
And I think, again, when we talk about providing opportunities, right, like not every parent could do that, but and again, if you don't have internet access, or you're not able to get work through the online, or English is not your first language, we have a phone number and we'll do it for you. So we're trying to make it as accessible to all as we can.
Any other questions for Stacy? Thank you, Stacy,
Thank you.
and thank you, Lindsay and Sarah. Okay, then we'll finish up with the report of the superintendent, then I'm gonna go back to the first one, so you know that, Meredith.
Yep.
So we have the 2022 COVID-19 protocol.
Yeah, so we talked about the opportunity to bring back this topic for conversation and discussion. Just to kind of give you some feedback that I've been receiving last week. We definitely received communication from our county health professionals, specifically regarding the number of student incidents and how that's increasing. We're seeing our burden rate continue to increase, so we want to continue to monitor that. The number of students and staff who have tested positive has increased. So at the beginning of the school year, we saw a significant increase. We saw a dip, and then we've seen another increase. So definitely is something that we're keeping our eye on as we look at the burden rate. Right now, our burden rate puts us in the very high area. That's based on the percent of number of positive cases. And our school district demographic data would indicate that we have 24 students and 4 staff members as of Friday who were positive. So just want to give you some updated information in regards to what we're seeing from the health related from our students and staff, and then definitely answer any questions that you have.
Alan?
So rather than me go back and forth, reiterate any of my same opinions on these mask mandates, I just have it's a little bit longer discussion that I would like to just bring up here. So I'll just read from this here. Rather than sit here and argue this afternoon and have us repeat the same things we debated last time around, I'd like to take a moment to touch on some questions that I have about the mandate. Confusion on where we are taking guidance from and why schools are deemed the only dangerous atmosphere worthy of wearing a mask. I'll be brief and not to go back and forth on this. I went to the store last night and I purchased some masks. I was wondering if this body should only allow certain kinds of masks, because the masks that I did purchase were multiple styles and brands. And it said that the only one that was able to fight COVID, and I'll quote here, this product has been authorized by the FDA under the EUA, that stands for the Emergency Use Act, and for use by the HCP, healthcare professionals, as PPE, which is personal protective equipment, to help prevent the spread of infection or illness in healthcare setting, and by the general public to help slow and spread the virus during COVID-19 pandemic. Which sounds nice, and that should offer some relief to some people. Never mind that the children are not healthcare professionals, if it didn't say right above that. But this also does go on to say that it is not FDA cleared or approved, the person that authorized the use. It also may contain silver and or copper, but who's counting? This, the next mask that I have here was a Dr. Family Protective Mask. This mask is a 3 layers of protection. It may reduce the wear to fluids, but does not eliminate the risk of contacting any disease or infection. It also states that the maximum relative humidity is greater than 80% or is less than 80%. Ask any HVAC technician when microorganisms grow like crazy, they will tell you that levels above 75%. If you're an asthma sufferer like myself, you can have an increased sensitivity and reactions to fungi. There's a reason I do have a nebulizer at home. The next one is a 5-layer mask, and it says that it is not to be used with beards or facial hair that prevent it from a good seal. So I guess I would ask if we are going to not allow facial hair at the school district if we're going to be focusing on mask mandates. This mask also, wearer must be fit tested and trained, like I was many years ago, in the correct use. It also states that the mask helps protect against certain particles, but does not eliminate the risk of contacting disease or infection. This one states that it should not be used for exposure to airborne germs, influenza, or other contagious diseases. In bold print, it also states that the misuse may adversely affect your health. And lastly, this one says that it is not to be used for airborne germs or other harmful substances. It says that it is not designed for children and those with facial hair. It even goes on to address the concern that I have about masks and asthma. It states that I should consult my doctor prior to the use if you have asthma or emphysema, which leads me to another question about who we should consult. Who is it we're supposed to obey? WebMD and CDC say that when it comes to masks while exercising, they say go for it. The WHO says that they have never advocated for it and they do not endorse it. So you have two COVID authorities here that people look to as the gospel with conflicting information. So who should we trust? When it comes to the vaccine, as of yesterday, you had vast numbers of people refusing to vaccinate in New York, where the government mandated that for healthcare workers. As a result, you have people who have invested large amounts of time and money into their field, walking away from it. Regardless of the threats, they wouldn't even be able to collect unemployment. Why? At what point do we pause and ask ourselves why so many people are not buying the narrative that we are being told? It's only. I've spoken to medical researchers who give talks all around the world, who've had their own research blocked and suppressed by Google, healthcare professionals and doctors and nurses who post things that this body wants to impose on the children. My point in bringing this up is when there is controversy among the experts as to what the answer is, which entity is the one that should be the one asking, which entity is the one with the answer that has become the one followed. Lastly, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. There are some districts that have had to go and close and become virtual. This is due to outbreaks. We just heard there were 24 in our district that have contracted that. The only question that I have regarding that is how they got sick. What led them to getting sick was not reported. And if you go into the community right now, you will see 95% of the population is not wearing a mask. What led to those outbreaks that would have contracted anywhere? What led to those outbreaks could have been contracted anywhere. So don't go adding to the assumptions of it being school related. Let the parents decide what they want to do about their kids getting sick. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Do we have any questions for Superintendent?
I'd like to make
Go ahead, Stacy.
I'd like to make a motion that we make the masks optional for the special education students.
I'll second.
We have a second, we have discussion? Stacy, do you want to add?
Sure. Yeah, so I just think that the parents have come out and talked about how difficult it is for special education students. I won't go into all the different nuances of that, but sensory issues, things on their face, not being able to read lips, things like that. And so I think that we should consider this for that group of students. Let the parents decide whether or not they want to have their child wear a mask to school.
I'd like to get some input from our staff, Mark, or some of the other people. How would that fit into our current scenario?
Joanne's not here, so.
Yeah. I can appreciate the feedback we had last board meeting, specifically relating to a parent who was concerned about their audio handicapped child. However, I also know that as of last meeting, I don't have the date today, we had more than 30 students who had completed the waiver specifically to not wear masks. And many of those waivers come from students who have IEPs. The Manitowoc Public School District has about 16% of its population identified with IEPs. So for us to make a overarching statement for IEP kids would be something that would likely put some students into a particular situation and others not. I don't see that as a model to universally masks. It would also then reduce our quarantine or increase our quarantine from 3 feet to 6 feet because we would no longer be universally be masking. So potentially adding more students who are close contact. So, I mean, I can appreciate the idea of individuals, but I think, from the safety of all, I would have concern.
So people are applying for exemptions and you're looking at it on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, any family can apply for a waiver.
Okay. And that seems to be working.
We have students who have waivers, who have completed waivers.
Mark, what's required for a waiver to be approved?
Physician, the family's physician or medical expert saying that mask is not feasible or is prohibited based on their expertise.
Anybody want to add anything else?
I have a question about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Are all those parents that have IEP children, are they aware of those forms being available to them?
Yeah, those forms have been available since last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've communicated, it's available on our website, available in our communications to parents. So my understanding that, yes, I mean, I'm not sure how we could greater make that known to people.
Are they allowed to not wear a mask, or do they have to have some other kind of accommodation, like a face shield? Can they come unmasked?
If you have a waiver, you can
Have nothing?
have nothing.
Okay.
I'm gonna move to postpone the motion. I don't want to vote for or against it right now because it just came up. I'm gonna move to postpone the motion until our next meeting. I'd ask for a second for that.
I'll second that.
Open that for discussion. And I'll just say it's because I'm not completely against it. I really want to know more about the waiver. I want to find out more about what our special ed, or who comprises our special ed students, what they're doing, what activities they're in. I mean, I know some of them are on one-on-one contact, some of them are multi contact. So right now, I'm not prepared to vote yes or no on this issue. And by postponing it, it allows us to collect more information. Otherwise, we vote on it today and then maybe that ends it.
That's an interesting proposal, Dave, since there are 2 court cases right now in Wisconsin regarding districts who are not masking and specifically kids with IEPs. So we might see some movement on that.
I would just prefer to continue the discussion until we have better information. Colin?
I don't like big things being put across my desk at the last minute. So I guess I can empathize with your feelings on that. So I would support that, I guess.
Anybody else want to add?
I think we need to get some, you want to find out more about the waiver. Do we invite any other experts in the field? I mean, do we consult with those teachers to find out more information of what that classroom demographic may look like and how that may affect them?
Well, I mean, I'll do some of that myself, just contacting teachers that I know are in special ed, and just finding out if that's creating a new problem or if that is helpful in where we're at right now with the mask issue. So Anything else? Otherwise, all in favor to postpone the motion until our next meeting?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so then it'll be under, old business for the next meeting. Any other questions or Mark? I do have a question, regarding the quarantine period that we have for students, and I believe it's 10 days. And I know that maybe it only is 7 or 8 days actually, because there's a weekend in there, but how do we provide adequate teaching and learning to those students who are in quarantine period? I know I've got some questions on that. So just kind of let me know that either we're able to, or what our plans are for anyone that might be in a quarantine period, and I'm assuming there's 24 students that maybe are in quarantine period right now.
Plus they're close contact, so there could be as many, I don't have it in front of me.
So
here.
whatever the number is, how are
Yes.
they being provided adequate
Right.
teaching and learning during that quarantine period?
So let me circle back and say that over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been meeting with classroom instructors and asked them to go back and ask their colleagues very specifically on how might we best provide instruction for students who are out. And in this case, we're talking very specifically students who are out with COVID-related symptoms, not I'm sick for a day or I'm on vacation, just very specifically COVID. And what we found is that there are many situations where it depends. And when I say it depends on the grade of the child. It depends on what kind of learning is going on in the classroom, and it depends on what the classroom is and what kind of capabilities. So I could go from a generalization. For example, if I am a middle school or high school student who has a elective, art, music, technical education, physical education, there is a Google Classroom where there's some classroom activities and work to be done. But in many cases, I'm not going to be able to do that work. I'm not going to be able to go into the wood shop or the shop, and I can't duplicate that. I can look at a few things. I can understand what those are. They're put in the classroom, but I'm not going to be able to repeat that. When we also talk about our very youngest learners, our teacher said, well, first of all, we don't have one-to-one going home right now with our kindergarten 4K through 4th grade, through 3rd grade. We have some capabilities if we needed to do that. But in order to expect a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old to work independently while watching something that might be new instruction is in many cases likely not feasible. So what we're doing is providing packets of information that the teacher is collecting and sending home to those families. As we talk about then our upper elementary school, 4th and 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they also have these, what we call Google Classroom experiences. And they're places where the teachers are putting their information. And in some cases, they're also working individually with the student. But every teacher across the board has said, I cannot do both well. I can't do a video presentation for the class and a class face-to-face presentation. I can't do both well. And when I have 24 kids in my class and 2 who are virtual, I'm not going to be able to interact necessarily and answer questions. So in some cases, maybe the video might be helpful, but in many cases, it's not, because I don't have the opportunity to interact. So again, we are in the midst. I met on last night actually with our building principals. This week we will be sending a communication to all of our staff about just our general, again, expectations to make sure that we're all on the same page. Our building principals are working hard on that. I would add to that piece that there also is factors that remain on staff members and their ability to teach from home. So there are situations where staff members are out because of COVID, and we are wanting them to teach from home if they are symptom-free or not sick. And then we would put another human, an aide, a teacher, somebody else in the classroom, and they would teach from home while the kids are in their class. Again, that works, assuming, number one, the teacher is in a position where they can teach from home, and number two, they're in an academic or a program that would allow them to work from home and teach. In some cases, if I'm the gym teacher, And I mean, I can't do the video while the kids are in gym class. That's just not gonna work. So there are some that aren't as well. But I will tell you that we're gonna continue to evolve and work hard on what those pieces are. We have a universal expectation that our teachers are working now. I know they're meeting and working with kids. But what we continue to know is that we want to try to help every kid while they're out for these up to 10 days. I think probably the most it would be is 8 or 7 days. But we also know that we have a classroom that we're trying to manage and outside work. So there's a balance there of trying to make the best of what we have and try to provide instructional opportunities so that kids can be successful in their periods. That answer?
Have we adequately addressed the concerns that have been raised at this point by the parents of students who've been informed?
Well, I think there are some who would like a video of the classroom, but they don't understand that the video, if I'm videoing and I don't have the information, like it's new learning, and I'm not there to provide you with new learning, that video is just a video, right? And it's not, it's not as easy as just clicking on my screen and allowing somebody to watch. I need to be interacting with somebody and engaging. So, in some cases it may work in a secondary level, and we're working on that, but in many cases, what we're continuing to hear again from the 30 teachers I met and then asking them to reach out to their peers at every building, that is not something that they can do well. So I think there's challenges. We want to evolve and try to provide teachers with opportunities to do that in many cases, but it's not going to be equal. Every teacher is not going to have the same model because it depends on what they're teaching, the grade level that they're at, and the core academic piece versus the encore.
As a recipient of the blended education last year, when we were at home and there were kids in the classroom, I think the teachers found it really hard because they don't stand in front of a podium and lecture. They're working with small groups of kids. They're potentially displaying something that's not something that can be on a screen, or they're, having to manipulate some equipment. I think of like tech ed, right? It was not a great virtual experience for new learning when there's a classroom full of kids also to have to be teaching to.
No doubt it is a challenge. And anytime students we know that are away from the building when their class is in the building, their opportunity is not going to be equal. So we're trying to make sure, again, by stressing these learning targets that teachers are putting on a weekly basis onto the spot, and working on making sure that students have access to that, and then ask the ability, obviously, through either Google Classroom or email that they can connect with their teacher.
Colin, go ahead.
So like when you say a video, you're discussing streaming, correct?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, I looked to my child was in MPSD. They did, she was there for 4K. One of the things she really enjoyed was the fact of simply just seeing her friends. It didn't matter the fact what exactly was the topic of the day, but you have a duration of time where they don't see their friends, offering them the time to just live stream with their friends, say hello, be part of that classroom. It's important because that's kind of a chunk of time that, where they're building those relationships, not only with their peers, but their teachers as well. So what I'm gathering from what you're saying a little bit there is that the ability to stream from one to another is not able to be done. Am I hearing that, or is it too hard to do, or I just didn't?
What you're talking about would be interaction, and what I'm saying is that that's not. So if I have a classroom of 25 kids and 3 are out with COVID, those 3 are not interacting with my class. The only people that are on a Google Meet are the 3 kids and the teachers teaching the other 22. What we found and what we continue to hear is I do not have the ability to stop and do what I'm doing with these 3 while I'm teaching these 22. I can't do that well. And if I do, then I have to completely stop and move here. If they're all virtual, right, or all in person, I have that ability to manage and work through that process. So by just putting the screen on, there's no interaction because none of the people who are in the classroom are on the Google Meet. That makes sense?
So it's a software limitation, kind of. in a
No.
sense.
It's the fact that if I want to be on a Google Meet, the Google Meet is like this, right? If we're virtual, every single one of us has a screen.
Okay.
So if someone is off screen, all they're seeing is this. They're not interacting. They're just looking at what's there.
I guess I'm thinking to, in my own professional experience, where I am in a meeting, I do virtual meetings a lot.
Absolutely. Every single one of those people are virtual.
Right.
Right. What I'm telling you is only 3 are virtual, 22 aren't virtual.
Mhm.
The 22 aren't on a screen. So the 3 aren't interacting with the 22.
I guess I see this, I don't understand why it couldn't be that in that classroom, they go about their normal classroom business. You have three heads that sit in put those computers on those desks, and it's just like those kids are in those desks where you have a head in the desk.
But what I would tell you is it seems like but that's not how it goes.
Okay.
Unless every one of those kids was in a Google Classroom, it's linked into individually there, right? So you're in the classroom and they all have 22 Chromebooks and they're facing the Chromebooks, and then those 3 Chromebooks, then they're all virtual even though they're face to face. But in the model that we're talking about, the instruction and the things are going on, just like we're talking right now. People are virtual and maybe watching that virtual piece, they're not interacting. That's how it would happen. The teacher is not, again, it's not ideal, I understand it, but the teacher is not interacting with people who aren't in the classroom. And what they're saying is, could they? Yes, that would mean they'd have to stop what they're doing and then go back onto their Google Meet while the classroom is going on. And they're saying, I can't do that well.
Just for I see where you're coming from, Colin. Like it feels like it's an equipment issue and not right. So where I work, we install many classrooms with equipment with overhead mics, cameras. They run about 15,000 a room to get something of quality where people can hear and see both ways. So, I mean, if the district is willing to invest around that much in every single classroom, I'm not sure. I mean, it's prohibitive, right? It's cost prohibitive to get the kind of equipment to do what you're saying, I think.
I think, again, you're working with adults.
Absolutely,
right?
and it's different. They gotta know how to mute and unmute
Right.
and all the.
And it's
chats and-
not like we can't provide, like, do we have the ability to, each teacher has a computer that's linked to our Wi-Fi and we can stream, like they can create a Google Meet. And if the students who aren't in class can join the Google Meet, their screen is whatever the teacher's laptop screen is. And again, at times we can promote something else. We can get a little camera maybe or something to that extent. But again, to kind of give you an idea, there is 100 K5, 200, almost 200 K5 classrooms, right? And of those 200 classrooms, we might have, let's say, 28 kids out there. 3 from here, 2 from there, 3 from here, 2 from there, 3 from there. The classroom teacher is not standing before that and just talking, right? They're doing a small group lecture or small group introduction, talking a little bit about some planning, and then they're working individually with kids. The kids who are on screen are seeing the teacher work individually with kids. They're not, it depends on where they are there. So we're working on that, but it's not, and again, depending on where you are, does the 3rd grader know how to log in and can they get all that information? Is the teacher the one who's kind of working through that? And what I'm saying is, I know it's not ideal, but there's not one teacher that came back to and says, you know what, let's do both. I can do that. They're saying, I can't do this well. And so we're going to create this place, either workbooks, packets, etc., and technology to support the learning. And then I will provide some individual one-on-one when they have questions or when they're available. We've talked about many different options, and what I would tell you is that what we have now, I think, is what is our best option based on the feedback that we got from people.
I think the expectation should be that, I mean, what I hear from parents is that they want the lesson. So even if it's a small group lesson, I think that the teacher can put the Chromebook on, hit the thing, record it, and the kid doesn't have to sit there for the whole 45 minutes, but after they break into groups, then they can answer questions later. But there's no reason why there cannot be the lesson part of it provided. And when you go into a Google Classroom, you can mute everybody anyway. I don't think they're looking for engagement as they are for teaching the lesson. And again, if it was, we are the ones that are mandating that these kids stay home. And by not providing those opportunities, that's wrong. And so I think the expectation should be that the teacher hits the button and the kid can do the lesson and they can listen to what the lecture is for the day.
That means that the teacher has to carry it on their Chromebook with every single, you know.
I think as
So if they get down on the
awful
carpet,
as this setup is,
Well, I'm just saying.
we
is
can
that
hear in this room and no one's carrying anything around. So no, they can have the Chromebook sitting there and it can pick up the audio. The other thing is, and I'm gonna get wrong about the months. You have been doing this for 20 some months. And that we don't have a system at the beginning of the year. You're gonna mandate that kids, healthy kids I might add, are sitting at home, not sick, and you refuse to instruct them via video by touching a button. So again, I'm not sure what we're waiting for. How much longer, how much more time do we need to perfect for COVID?
Are you wanting me to respond to that, or are you just telling me?
It's a question.
Okay.
How much
So
longer do you need?
here's what I'm going to say to you. As a academic professional, I talk to our professionals. Clicking a button is not teaching. It's not that easy. So when you are making an assumption for a educational system that is not valid. Okay, so so I just want you to think through this, right?
Mark, I totally disagree with you.
Okay,
And I understand that, and I don't want to be lectured to today.
okay, so I can listen to yours, but you can't listen to mine.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I just got done telling you, if I am an art, music, bias, special education teacher, I just click that, and then that's all the learning that goes on. It's not feasible. It's not that simple.
So there's not a lesson for gym. We don't teach anything in gym.
Absolutely, there's a lesson.
Okay,
Right.
and they can't listen to that lesson?
The listening to the lesson. Today, we're going to jog 3 laps, stretch, and then play badminton.
That's not a lesson.
What I'm saying is that I'm working with our staff specifically. We have a plan right now that has been communicating to our families and to our parents specifically about what they want. I agree it's not ideal, but what I'm telling you is that what you're asking is not ideal either. It's not going to improve our academic instructional practices. We can mandate, say, just click the button, but it's not that easy. In addition to that, if we are streaming video, we also have to take into consideration our IEP obligations, and we can't probably do that well either. So we're trying to piecemeal. That's what happens when you're in a pandemic. Things don't work perfectly. It's not like we're not trying to do this well. But what I'm telling you is that it is not as easy as clicking the button and making it happen. It's not that easy because every situation is different. There are some situations where we may be able to do that. Very specifically at secondary levels where you're talking about core academic classes. But at all levels, it's just not that easy. So we're working through that, trying to make sure the teachers can be both places and do it well.
And just for the record on the video, I applaud the teachers that are going ahead and doing it on their own without being told, like math. So Great job.
Colin?
So I guess I don't, as far as the IEP aspect, it's my understanding it's the best you can possibly do for those children, right? And if you're doing the best you can do, then I'll set that on the side. The other thing though is the clicking the button. I don't think it's just a clicking of the button. That's not what anybody's trying to get at. It's pushing record, understand. But if I'm, take for example, Common Core math, all right? If I'm going to be, I was never taught Common Core math. It is completely different than what I was raised in learning, all right? And there's many parents that are taught or that were never taught Common Core math. To have the child be expected to do in Google Classroom this type of math, parents have no idea how to do it. They can't help their child. If there is a record of the discussion, the lesson, and all those things, discussion is part of learning. A simple, click of record, clicking the button to record what it is the discussion is taking place, how we go about it, this is solving the problem. I don't see that as why that is a huge ask. That should be a simple, let's just record this little small tidbit, and I think that's what actually Stacy was, probably alluding to. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but let's record this aspect so that these kids can actually learn this and not have to figure it out on their own. That there are things out there that a parent might not know. I don't understand why we can't just have that lesson plan provided to them.
So we are providing a lesson, right? But what I'm telling you is exactly what you're talking about. So if I don't know how to do it, right, and I watch a Google Classroom, and again, it's not going to be like this because we don't have this in 500 classrooms, right? We don't have this. We don't have this in 500 classrooms.
I can do that with my phone.
Okay. In a classroom setting, in a 1,000 square foot area with 24, you understand there's limitations to that. So could we, in some situations, videotape what is happening? The teacher's at the board doing an overall lesson. In some situations that work, yes. In all situations, it's not going to work because, in fact, the learning that's going on in a classroom, I don't know yet, and I have to be able to ask some questions, and there's no interaction going on. So you're asking the parents to do something that you just said that they don't know how to do.
No, I'm not asking the parents to do that.
But
I'm asking the teachers to do that.
Right, but I can't.
And because the parents can't.
I will continue to work and see if there's a better way to do that. What we're going to have in some situations is some classrooms yes and some classrooms no. And so we've been working on this literally. I continue to say I'm also need to be respectful of what I'm hearing from the people who are doing the work, right? And what the people who are doing the work are saying is, I can't do both well. So if I am going to say to the people who are doing the work after they're telling us, okay, I heard you, but you're going to have to do both. We can do that. But, I'm not sure that that's the model that I'm looking for at this particular point.
So are there brainstorming sessions that are going on? Is this included in the meetings? Are they looking for benchmarking tools in other schools? Is this, I guess, when you're trying to expand, we're not the only district that's out there. We're not the only district that's facing this. Are we looking to what those other schools are doing to tackle this virtual aspect? We have been at this for a very long amount of time, and the fact of where we're at right now, I would feel that it would be safe to assume that there are other schools that are doing that.
Okay, yes.
Because that's always going to be the case in just about everything.
Right. So we're always looking at feedback from other folks. What I can tell you is when we were moving from a face-to-face model, from a blended model to the virtual to the face-to-face, we heard significant improvements. Blended, we heard not very good. 100% virtual, not very good, but we can do that. 100% virtual, 100% face-to-face is something that is easier than blended. And we heard that throughout the entire year. And when we came back to this face-to-face, we split it and said, either you're virtual or you're with us, right? There's a reason why we did that, because we said back after all this work, we can't do this well. It doesn't work well. So I understand, like we've got 8 days of kids who are out. That's not what I want. I don't want kids to be behind. I want to continue to work through that. But what I'm saying is, it's not as easy as it seems to be able to provide instruction to kids who are out. To provide learning, that's what we're trying to do. So I will continue. Yes, I've done that. We had a meeting last night with building administrators. I had a meeting the week before with classroom instructors. They went out and filled out a Google sheet, gave it back to us. We're getting feedback on how to improve what we're doing. Absolutely.
Has it, one last thing in regards to that, has it ever been discussed to allow those children who are being quarantined and who, they feel they're completely fine? Has it ever been discussed to prove their COVID status with a test to allow their return?
We've probably talked about and vetted many, many different strategies. Right now, our strategy continues to follow the guidance that we're getting from our CDC and our local health department, which means close contact or someone who is deemed close contact is less than 3 feet, 15 minutes or more, or physical contact. And so that is the model. If in fact we choose to not follow their model, then that's something. But right now we have not.
So the model is saying that a test is not sufficient?
Correct.
And that it would.
So again, what to get into without being a physician and knowing all the specifics, but get into it, that when you're a close contact, I get tested tomorrow, I might not be positive tomorrow, I might be positive in 3-7 days. That's why the recommendation is made that, and we've seen that. So again, that's probably not the conversation right now, but that's where that's coming from. Those aren't I didn't make up those. Those are medical professionals.
Anything else from our? Okay, we'll move on to new business. Well, actually, we'll go back to committee reports. Meredith, you are the chairperson of the curriculum committee.
Yep, so we had a pretty comprehensive meeting on September 16th. One of the things that was brought forth to our committee a couple of months ago was evaluating a policy number 5310 in regard to health services. There was some concerns about the ways that the policy was written. And as we walked through that with Joanne, it was discovered there was an updated Neola policy. And so we asked Joanne to go back and do some research, have some conversation, both with Neola as well as our attorney. And what came back was a resounding, this is federal law. We need to have this policy on our books and follow it. So later on today, there is the recommendation for a first read of the updated 5310 so that we are in compliance. So you'll see that in a few minutes. We also had a comprehensive look through our academic standards. If you remember, at our last regular board meeting, there were some concerns about the academic standards, and those were sent back to the curriculum committee for review and recommendation. After we discussed those, there was a unanimous decision between Kathy Willis, myself, and Stacy to forward those standards in approval of those for today's meeting. So you'll see that later on as well. Again, those are all in alignment with DPI academic standards. We then took a look at a deep dive into math data, specifically looking at longitudinal data between 7th and 8th grade students who take part in the compacted math, and looking at some then results later on down the road within a 5-year period, specifically looking at ACT scores and other scores. And so we were able to have a comprehensive conversation about that as well. No action was needed during that. That was simply informational. And then finally, we looked at the parent and student engagement survey results. That was something that was postponed from the prior meeting. Folks wanted some more information to be fleshed out, and so we did get those results, and that was also informational purposes, no action item there. And that's my report.
Any other questions for Meredith on her committee? I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes from that meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then we'll move on to new business, and you're back, Meredith, with 2 items.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna,
I'm just gonna see which one's first here. I'm just scrolling.
first read of policy 5310, health services.
Yep, so again, there was no real good fit for a committee to review this policy, but again, we worked in conjunction with Joanne Metzen, and she did her research, and we are now doing a first read of this policy. It has been updated. So I'm not sure there's an action to be taken, Dave, other than, is there something we do for a first read?
Yeah, we have to,
I'm sorry.
the board has to approve the first read, and then it comes, if approved, it comes back for the second read. If it's not, it goes back to
Okay,
the committee. Since the committee approved it, we're not taking a motion here in a second, but we start a discussion.
okay.
So if that's where we're at, I'll open discussion on the first read of policy 5310. Anybody have anything they want to discuss? Stacy?
Yeah, I still don't like the language in here. The invasive physical exam means any medical exam that involves the exposure of private body parts or any act during such exam that includes incision, insertion, or injection into the body, but does not include a hearing, vision, or scoliosis screening. So I think that we should modify this. My understanding from the legal team was that the policy is necessary to notify the public, specifically parents, that this is going to happen. And since I can't ever see that we would be doing an invasive physical exam, I think that we can change it, modify it to be that we just have a time when we're going to notify parents of approximate dates of the school year when any non-emergency exam or screening is scheduled or expected.
I think Joanne explained why that language needed to be in there, and I don't remember exactly what it was. Can you recall, Mark?
Yeah, so the language says that school districts are bound to the requirements and definitions found within this. As such, any objection to the policy language is properly directed to the federal legislatures, not to the individual school districts. So as much as I don't disagree, that's why we were alerted, like incision, insertion, like those are, but this is not something that the individual school district is able to modify.
So it's a federal mandate or federal language?
I don't know that it's a mandate from the federal government. I guess I would have to
It's
read.
federal law,
It's federal
20
law.
U.S. Code, paragraph 123.2H, protection of pupil rights, requires that the school district state in policy the requirement of parental notification related to the rights of parents to inspect instructional materials, to be informed and consent to the use of student surveys collecting certain information, and to be notified and opt out of any non-emergency invasive physical examination. That's what it does. And this is from the attorney.
So how can we delete it? I don't believe we could.
Could we? I don't think we need, I mean, we could certainly change the language and still uphold the federal law by stating that we would follow US code and what it is. We don't have to have that US code language in our policies if that is what the area of concern is. We don't have invasive we don't have invasive procedures. So why have procedures that we don't have in our policy book? And then on top of that, you can simply state that we will follow US Code 1232H if required, right?
Well, I don't know if that's right or not. I only know what the attorney told us.
Okay.
And I don't have any differing legal opinion other than what the attorney said. So,
I guess I still would not support that type of language because of, I don't think that is, there's no sense in it being there. I don't find the language appropriate. I mean, Mark even alluded that he felt that it was, I mean, maybe I'll put words in your mouth, but concerning. But why have things that are concerning in our policies if we don't do them?
In this case, we're following federal law.
Right, and if you just put in there that we'll follow the federal law, then, right?
I'm just going to read what it says. The policy does not authorize school districts to provide non-emergency invasive physical examination. Rather, it requires that a school district provide notice to parents and legal guardians that the district plans for such examinations of students. Importantly, this policy language implies federal law 20 U.S. Code 12332H, protection of pupil rights, requires that school districts state in policy requirements of parental notification related to the rights of parents to inspect instructional materials, be informed and consent to the use of student surveys and collecting certain information, and be notified and opt out of any non-emergency invasive physical examination. Like, we don't, as much as I would say, Colin, we don't get to edit it. Like,
We're just opening ourselves up to lawsuits, and I don't want to go down that road here, so.
And it's the notification, it's not the implementation of
Correct.
doing those
It's the
things.
notification.
It's the notification that is required. It's not saying we have to do those medical procedures.
Right.
Or that it gives us permission to do so,
Right.
so Dave, you need a what?
but we're gonna vote on it, and we're just in discussion, and, you know, again, I'm gonna support it because that's what the attorney tells us to do. That's the legal advice that we have, is to support this. I don't have any legal advice that conflicts with this policy at this time, so, you know, I'm just gonna support it based on the legal advice we have. I don't know any other way to go. That would be reckless not to follow legal advice.
I agree.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed?
No.
No,
Okay, first read is approved. We'll move to a second read at our next meeting. Then we have the academic standards. Do you want to address that?
Sure, so again, we reviewed all of the standards. We had it both the paper version and it's been on our NPSD site as well as DPI site for many years. And Pam walked through how the changes and updates work with academic standards and the review that occurs at the state level. When we look at how, you know, when we adopt the DPI standards, what a rigorous review they go through when things are updated or changed. We had a good question and answer session. And in the end, had a unanimous vote to forward those to the board for approval.
Okay, that also doesn't require a motion and a second, since it's brought forward from the curriculum and approved there. Do we have any discussion on the academic standards? Stacy?
yeah, I just wanted the public to know that I did look at all of these documents. One of the questions, there is language in here that refers to equity. And if you notice, every single one of the DPI standards is switching over to that language or has had it in there. So I know a lot of times that there's concern that critical race theory and equity are interchangeable, but there was nothing in here that was suggested of racial equity or that was being directly taught in these standards. So that is why I supported the standards that were put forth.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Then we're on to future meeting days. I believe our budget and finance had a rescheduled meeting, is that correct? Yeah, he's not here. That's correct, they have one coming up? Remember on
They
that?
are looking into dates. She sent an email to do either Friday or Monday, Angela. And she was waiting for committee members to get back to her.
Anything for building and grounds?
Yeah, we have a building and grounds on Friday at 2:30 at Washington Middle School. Masks will be mandatory. If any committee member is not able to accommodate by wearing a mask, let me know right now, because we will make arrangements to do a meeting for anyone that does not want to attend in a mask. We do it virtually. So let me know right now what you're able to do.
Sure, let's do virtual then.
Okay, then you will do virtual. I will do in person with Chris.
So am I gonna be able to see what I see you guys are doing a tour, are you gonna accommodate the ability to see those things?
I can work with Chris to accommodate that. We already discussed it. He said he would be willing to take some video of what we're looking at. So that's what we can do for you, Colin. Okay?
Yep.
The mask mandate, I will hold firm on that going into Washington Middle School. School is in session at that point still.
Sure.
And it just would not look good if we have board members walking into a school without a mask on. Plus, we have a required mask mandate in all of our school district buildings. So that's where I'm at, Colin. So I know you really wanted to get in there. I know you wanted to look at some of these things. So, you know, if you're not able to accommodate the mask, then we'll make other arrangements for you.
Thanks.
Curriculum, do you have anything scheduled?
We do. On October 6th, we have a walk through Madison. Stacy, I would say the same for masks, so do you need to make an accommodation for you? Or will you
Actually, I
ask?
can't be there.
Okay, so we'll be walking through through Madison and getting to know some of their teachers and Stacy a little bit better and seeing what the kiddos are up to. And then we have our regular meeting on October 21st.
Personnel, that's Carrie's choice. Is there anything planned for personnel?
Yeah, I'll be working, we'll be scheduling something so when he comes back. So,
Okay, and then going back to the COVID, I had that ad hoc COVID committee. Remember I talked about that, looking at protocols or just at least going over the protocols. Colin, you still want to be on that?
Yep.
Okay, good. You're on. Lisa said she'd be on it, and I'll be on it. If we meet next week, and I'd like to get this going, I'm gonna have to meet like a Google Meet. So what kind of times work out for you?
I'm pretty flexible. You said next week sometime?
Yeah, since we're doing it Google, it makes it a little easier, at least to schedule
Right.
around our schedule, so.
Okay, because this ad hoc committee does this need to be,
We still have to do public notice because the 3 members are board members, so. It's not a citizens committee, so. Well, I don't know, start with Monday. Monday work?
Monday, I cannot do between, I can do anything after 11.
Oh, yeah, that's even better. Let's see, Monday. Well, Lisa, what works for you on Monday?
Anything.
Anything.
If it's Google, I can do anything.
How about 1 o'clock? Is that okay?
Works great.
And then Lori will have to set that up for us, because that's gonna be a Google, it'll have to be a public meeting. Okay? All right, Monday at 1 o'clock, okay. And then our next regular scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, October, that would be the 12th, right? That sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody want to bring up here? Stuff, or before we adjourn? Then I'd ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.